Back then, the class structure looked like this. There was a large working class and hardly any unemployed people at all, a reasonably sized middle class and a smaller upper class. And the more money you earned, the more tax you paid. Today, I suspect our social structure looks a bit like this. A large group of unemployed poor and working poor, whose incomes are supplemented by billions of dollars paid for by what was once the middle class, but is now the struggling class. While the profits from things like rents and consumer items go into the pockets of the wealthiest 10%. So how did all of that happen? Take a look at this. It's a graph that shows that the gap between the rich and the poor is growing faster in New Zealand than most developed countries. And the reason that's happening is because of an economic theory that was adopted by our politicians about 30 years ago. The Treasury paper that changed our country from a land of cooperation and common ownership into a nation of competitive individuals and privatised assets. In short, it says the government should take its hands off the economy and to dump a whole lot of regulations that were holding back the finance and the business sectors. What it didn't say is that these were the very same policies of self-interest that Republican President Ronald Reagan was promoting.
Vote for me if you believe in yourself, if you believe in your right to control your own destiny and plan your own life. Yes, and have to say with the spending of your own money.
End of the Reagan era, I'm like Lemma 12er, old enough to understand that shit had changed forever. They declared the war on drugs, like a war on terror. But what it really did was let the police terrorize whoever. But mostly black boys, but they would call us niggas and lay us on our belly while they fingers on their triggers. They boots was on our head, they dogs was on our crotches, and they would beat us up if we had diamonds on our watches. And they would take our drugs and monies as they pick our pockets. I guess that's the privilege of policing for some profit. But thanks to Rogernomics, prison turned to profits. Cause free labor's the cornerstone of U.S. economics. Cause slavery was abolished unless you are in prison. You think I ambush it and then read the 13th Amendment. Involuntary servitude and slavery it prohibits. That's why they giving drug offenders time in double digits. Ronald Reagan was an actor, not at all a factor. Just an employee of the country's real masters. Just like the Bushes, Clinton and Obama. Just another talking head telling lies on teleprompters. If you don't believe the theory, then argue with this logic. Why did Reagan and Obama both go after Gaddafi? We invading sovereign soil, going after oil. Taking countries is a hobby, paid for by the oil lobby. Same as in Iraq and Afghanistan. And Ahmadinejad say they coming for Iran. They only love the rich and how they load the poor. If I say any more, they might be at my door. Who the fuck is that? Staring in my window, doing that surveillance on Mr. Michael Render. I'm dropping off the grid before they pump the lead. I leave you with 4 words, I'm glad Reagan dead.
A large group of unemployed poor and working poor, whose incomes are supplemented by billions of dollars paid for by what was once the middle class, but is now the struggling class. While the profits from things like rents and consumer items go into the pockets of the wealthiest 10%. So how did all of that happen?
The ballad of the bullet, some freedom or some bullshit. Will we ever do it big or just keep settling for little shit? We brag on having bread, but none of us are bakers. We all talk having greens, but none of us own acres. If none of us own acres and none of us grow wheat, then who will feed our people when our people need to eat? So it seems our people starve from lack of understanding, cause all we seem to give them is some ballin' and some dancing and some talking about our car and imaginary mansions. We should be indicted for bullshit we inciting, and the children deaf and pretending it's exciting. We are advertisements for agony and pain. We exploit the youth, we tell them to join the gang. We tell them dope stories, introduce them to the gang. Just like Oliver North introduced us to cocaine in the 80s when them bricks came on military plane.